the newsagents.
Now, at some point in the second half of this year, we will all go to the polls and make a choice. Not just about Conservatives versus Labour, or Sunak versus Starmer. It will be a choice between the future and the past. Now, I remain confident that my party can prevail.
Rishi Sunak is making no bones about the fact he is properly on the election warpath right now. And he's setting out the vision of a country which is a dangerous place. This dangerous world of Rishi means just one thing. You have to stick with what you know and vote Tory.
But how do you make the argument that you are the future when you have been the past 14 years? And Rishi Sunak is trying to navigate between the selective bits of the 14 years that went okay and forgetting all the bits that went horribly wrong. Will that wash? Welcome to the newsagents.
It's Emily.
It's John.
And with everything that's going on right now in the world, the protests in Tbilisi in Georgia, or the circling of Kharkiv in Ukraine by Russia, it would have been very easy, I think, for Rishi Sunak to get up, make a speech about this dangerous world we're in and why he was the safer pair of hands. But instead we got this very freewheeling electioneering speech which tried to encompass everything from defence to ozempic to education. We're going to let you have a taste of it so you can hear what we're talking about.
Now, I feel a profound sense of urgency because more will change in the next 5 years than in the last 30. I'm convinced that the next few years will be some of the most dangerous, yet the most transformational that our country has ever known. So the question we face today is this: who has the clear plan and bold ideas to deliver a secure future for you and your family? And counterintuitive as it may seem, throughout human history, the greatest breakthroughs of science and learning have so often come at the moments of greatest danger. The first electronic digital computers were developed by British codebreakers in the Second World War. Solar technology went from powering pocket calculators to a viable commercial technology following the energy crisis of the 1970s. And we invent, discover and produce new products and services that the world wants to buy. From aircraft wings in Filton, to financial services in Glasgow, to incredible cultural exports like film, music and TV, or sports like the Premier League. Everywhere from rural Kenya to the cityscapes of South Korea, people stay up at all times of the day and night to watch their favourite British team. Two brothers from Merseyside sat around their kitchen table and built Castor, a £1 billion sportswear business taking on global giants like Nike and Adidas. Their kit now worn by Red Bull Formula One and Bayer Leverkusen. And you can see the opportunity too in healthcare, giving people longer, healthier lives. In Denmark, Novo Nordisk created the Ozempic drug, which is not only helping to tackle chronic disease globally, but single-handedly grew Denmark's entire economy last year. So all this progress should show us that while this is one of the most dangerous periods we've ever known, it will also be one of the most transformational.
The funny thing about this speech, given how important it was to Rishi Sunak, was just how much it was scattergunning around various different topics where every single government department had said, well, you've got to include a bit on this, you've got to include a bit on that, you've got to include a bit on something else. And all these topics kind of came and they went, and they're without a central argument.
By Leverkusen. I mean, what was it? What? It was whiplash stuff, wasn't it? By Leverkusen. Ozempic. What? The Danish drug. They're really rich. That what? Child literacy. The who? The civic duties. And I guess the point is, I sort of feel this. I feel a bit for him that he probably went out thinking, or having said, I'm going to make a speech about the dangerous world we live in. And you're so right. And then somebody goes, yeah, but don't make it too dangerous. You know, have a positive spin on it. Make people feel good about themselves. And it'll be like, yeah, you're right. Remind them about, you know, how we brought down this or how we've done this or how we've done that. Yeah, you're right. And so actually people have given him a speech that doesn't hang together in any shape or form. There is no policy announcement. There is no pledge. There is no promise to improve things for any one particular group of people. He just had a go at Keir Starmer, essentially, what was that great line? He basically said, stop blaming the Conservatives for the last 14 years. Why?
Well, if you are going to say that look at our record, we are the people to guide Britain for the next 5 years, look at what we've done over the past 14 years. The danger is I sit there and go, last 14 years. Oh, yeah, we had Brexit. Well, that hasn't come that brilliantly. Oh, we had Partygate. Yeah, that wasn't great either. Had Liz Truss and the rise in interest rates. No, that hasn't been great for homeowners, particularly. And you start going back. Oh, austerity. Yeah, no, I didn't like that either. And Rishi Sunak has to be very careful in saying to people, oh, look at what we've done over the past 14 years. Because if you cherry pick, you kind of think, well, what were the great bits?
Well, it wasn't so long ago, I'm going to say about 8 months, that
Exactly.
Rishi Sunak was telling us that he wasn't part of the last 14 years. He really wasn't part of the last 30 years. And he had a vision that was nothing to do with either David Cameron or George Osborne or Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. Suddenly he kind of is. And he was talking about the great advances in gay marriage. Well, last time I looked, that was under the Cameron government. So I actually got the voice of Cameron in some of this speech. I got the intonation of Cameron in some of this speech, the sort of calls to civic duty. I wonder whether he was sort of helped along the way to remember the past a little bit more inclusively with a few more Conservative leaders along the way. But I think that's right. He hasn't decided whether he wants to be the new thing or the old thing, or the good thing, or the continuity thing. We just don't know anymore, right?
So at the party conference, he spoke about the 30 years of a political system that incentivises the easy decision, not the right one. So that, in other words, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, Liz Truss had taken easy decisions, not the right ones. Now he's saying, no, they took the right ones. I think there is an intellectual incoherence about that argument. And the other big argument he made, which I think we do need to talk about, because this is how the speech was built, which is defence.
Yeah.
And he's saying, we're the only country that will keep you safe because we have set an ambition to spend 2.5% of our GDP on defence by 2030. But if you look at what the Conservatives are spending now on defence as a proportion of GDP, it's way less than it was when the Tories took power in 2010. So you could argue that under Labour, defence spending was much better.
Look, I'm going to say something that I think some people will find a bit distasteful, and that is that when you
Don't break the habits of a lifetime.
I know, extraordinary. But I think when you're a leader in, let's say, peril, right, there are two things that can change your fortunes. One is something fantastic happening. You know, the economy massively gets
We
better.
win the
Growth
World Cup.
massive. We win the World Cup. We win all of it. And the other is something terrible happening to your country, which has a sort of rally to the flag effect, which means people get really scared of where they are and they tend to sort of back whoever's in power, back whoever's in charge as a way of saying, let's just not make things any less stable than we want to. And Rishi Sunak is talking like somebody who is almost trying to put us into the frame where something terrible is about to happen. And it hasn't happened yet, but it might. You know, it might, everyone. And so if it happens, please carry on voting for me. And I think that's a very, very dubious place to be campaigning from, because it's not a place of optimism, really. And it's not a place where you can say, I'm not being funny, everyone, but we've got to stop, you know, X terror threat, which is on our doorstep right now. So please just bear with me. You're kind of saying it's coming at you. It's like trying to be a scary monster in the corner of the room.
And it has to have credibility as an attack. If you go back to the Falklands War, and Maggie Thatcher wrapping herself in the Union Jack after Britain had retaken Port Stanley and all the rest of it, and Michael Foot was the leader of the Labour Party, and you did think, well, yeah, Thatcher is a strong...
Who do you want in charge?
Who would we want in charge, Margaret Thatcher or Michael Foot?
Yeah.
And you saw, you know, let's go much more recently than that, to the election in 2019, and who would you want in charge, Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn? Looking after Britain's defences, well, a lot of people thought Jeremy Corbyn, with his antipathy towards NATO, was not the right person. But Keir Starmer and John Healey, the shadow defenceman, they're not those people. They're not kind of unilateral
It's
nuclear
quite elite.
disarmament. They're not the Woolly Hat Brigade marching outside whichever nuclear base it happens to be.
Yeah, I think it is quite a leap to make people feel that Keir Starmer has not shown his commitment to, you know, defence or the flag or sort of Britain's place in the world. I think it's going to be an uphill struggle for Sunak to try and push that onto Labour, as I think it was quite an uphill struggle when he said this line.
Despite having 14 years with nothing to do but think about the future, Labour have almost nothing to say about it. No plans for our border, no plans for our energy security, no plans for our economy either, and no principles either.
And that is quite a mirror image place. It's like, we've been in power for 14 years, and what have you done? Sorry, what have we? You mean, what have you? No, what have you done? What have you thought of? Well, OK, this is Keir Starmer's response to all of that just now.
The first duty of any government, particularly an incoming Labour government, is national security, the security of the country, and that would be my first priority. Now, the Prime Minister today has made a speech. I think it's his 7th reset in 18 months. And I think that really shows you that the choice as we go into this election is now pretty clear. It's a choice between a changed Labour Party that puts the country first and party second, or continuing with this government, the chaos and division that's been going on for so long, caused so much hardship. And we can't afford another 5 years of this government's chaos and division because there's a cost to that.
So understandably, Keir Starmer saying, we are the people that are going to sort out and bring you calm and politics will be normal again. I think, look, in fairness to Rishi Sunak, he has tried to do a lot of that and take out some of the madness from the Johnson years and the Truss days. Do we call that the Truss era days? I think we do.
The Truss minutes.
The Truss minutes. And I think that, he has done that to an extent. But his party, the defections, the plots, all the rest of it, it's still there. And that is his problem. And I don't blame Rishi Sunak for trying to frame it in the way that he's trying to frame it. I think that what else are you meant to do? He is fighting an election. It's going to be difficult. It's a mighty uphill struggle. But as you said, it needs something fantastic for him to happen, or
Fantastic
something
or
so
terrible.
terrifyingly awful for him to happen, I think, to shift the dial. Because at the moment, the polls have been the polls for the past, 2 years.
Weirdly, I think the heat was on Starmer last week, and I think it was on Starmer over the weekend, over the whole Elphick defection stuff, because it showed what I still think probably is a bit of a lapse of judgment or a lapse of homework within the Labour leadership on thinking that that was all going to be fine and nobody was going to mind her entry into, the left of British politics. And I think the fact that Rishi Sunak has now sort of come out here, I mean, he was asked about Natalie Elphick and he sort of laughed a bit and he sort of slightly dodged the question. And
I thought he gave quite a good answer, actually. It's probably
Let's
worth
have a
listening to.
Look, actually, more than anything, I think it shows less about her and it's more about Keir Starmer. And it shows him to be completely and utterly unprincipled. Right? This is someone who went from embracing Jeremy Corbyn to embracing Natalie Elphick. It just tells it that you can't trust what the guy says. Right? And if you're trying to be everything to everyone, fundamentally, you don't stand for anything.
Look, that is a perfectly reasonable answer that Starmer does have to explain how he supported Jeremy Corbyn when he was leader of the Labour Party, now supports Elphick, but is under no circumstances going to allow Jeremy Corbyn to stand as a Labour candidate in this next election. So that was all good from Sunak. What I don't understand on a wider level is news management. That if this is the big day of the big Sunak speech for the big argument for the general election, why do you have Esther McVey, his inverted commas common sense minister, making a speech which is getting headlines, but honestly,
Look, I think it's important to say that Esther McVey was making a very, very important speech about people who do absolutely ridiculous jobs. I mean, no one can make that speech better than Minister for Common Sense, Esther McVey, who pointed out the fact that people in the civil service were given jobs in equality, diversity and inclusion. And she, as the Minister for Common Sense, thinks that is an absolute waste of taxpayers' money. And she had a go at, I'm just going to say this, random lanyards.
We need to stop the inappropriate backdoor politicisation of the civil service, which diverts time and resources from that focus on the public. We have too often seen them distracted by fashionable hobby horses, especially when it comes to issues like equality and diversity. Working in the civil service is all about leaving your political views at the building entrance. Trying to introduce them by the back door via lanyards should not happen.
So this is Esther McVey, basically, call it what you want, a war on woke or a war on lanyards or whatever. She's basically trying to say, don't parade into work what you feel at home. And we understand there's particular disquiet in some Tory circles about, whether it's LGBT sort of rainbow issue. I don't know what an LGBT lanyard looks like, if I'm honest.
I think it's got a rainbow on it.
I think it's probably very colourful. Or whether it's, I'm just thinking because Jeremy Hunt always used to wear an NHS badge. Is that political? David Cameron wears the Ukraine flag. Is that political? Is an amnesty badge political? Probably yes. But is a Ukraine flag political? Probably.
What about an Israel flag? What about an Israel flag?
Can you wear an Israel flag but not a Palestinian flag?
Or vice versa?
Right. So yes, in theory, you can talk about a minister of common sense. You can talk about common sense all you want, which is it's completely common sense that we should try and be impartial in the workplace if you work in the civil service. Yes, we're all nodding. Sorry, what does that mean? Does it mean I can tell you I'm gay? Oh, I can't. But because what? It's not impartial to be gay, or it's not impartial to support a country that I come from, or it's not impartial to support the NHS. It actually makes no sense when you come down to asking her to explain or spell out what she's saying. This was our colleague Henry Riley on LBC, just trying to get her to explain what she means.
The gentleman from LBC in that.
Thank you very much. You spoke about lanyards as being one sort of example within the civil service, but I wonder how far are you willing to take that? If I turn up with a sort of LGBT coloured lanyard or a Palestinian flag, could I face the sack if I refuse to work for the civil service without wearing that lanyard? And just on Reform UK...
Can I just ask you a question? Yeah. Why would you wear that lanyard?
Well, no, I'm not saying I would.
But why would you? Why would you feel...
I don't know. But clearly people do in the civil service, hence why you've got the idea.
Okay, so you wouldn't know why you would?
Well, no, but you said it's a problem.
It's Henry's problem now. It's Henry's problem because he can't explain why she's talking about lanyards, and she doesn't know why he would wear a lanyard, but he's not saying he'd wear a lanyard, he's just asking why she mentioned them.
Look, can I just gently say that maybe this hasn't been as thought through as a policy as maybe it could have been, where you open up sort of this little can and you think, oh, well, I'll be able to close it very quickly. And it gets really complicated. And, as you say, if you can't wear a rainbow, what are we against gay rights? As a government or as an employer, I get the idea that when you are interacting with the civil service, you don't want to be getting someone who is politically motivated and going to judge whatever it is you're contacting them about on political grounds. Totally, it's an impartial civil service. But a modicum of self-expression, do you then go the next stage and say no religious symbols, which is what they do in France, but that is a very, very Republican message. Do you not wear things about the king and monarchy? Where do you draw the line? That's the problem.
Yeah, and I also think, despite the fact that she kind of quotes Aristotle and Candide when she's talking about common sense, even the word common sense has become politicised because... Actually, when Esther McVey talks about common sense, what she really means is none of your left-wing ideas, right? Common sense really means the Lee Anderson wing of the party. Most people understand common sense because Lee Anderson says it and therefore it shall be. Common sense is not sort of leaning to the left or exploring left issues or questioning the ideology of what the government is at the moment. And that all comes under the umbrella, in Esther McVey's mind at the moment, of common sense.
Just when you thought the Trump hush money trial could not get more exciting than having Stormy Daniels on the stand under oath and under him, you have this week Trump's longtime Mr. Fix-It attorney Michael Cohen, and how his appearance goes before the court will be crucial, I think.
Yeah, to put this in context, Michael Cohen doesn't like Donald Trump. Michael Cohen really doesn't like Donald Trump. In fact, he really viscerally loathes Donald Trump to the point where he actually had a T-shirt made up of Donald Trump's face behind bars. Now, there is a big question over whether Michael Cohen is going to help the prosecution's case or hinder it. Because if he steps over the line, they will just decide that Cohen is a kind of vitriolic freak who's fallen out with Donald Trump, and it might actually make Donald Trump's life easier. At the heart of this case, to take you back to Stormy Daniels, is the £130,000 of hush money, which Michael Cohen delivered to Stormy Daniels. Now, Donald Trump will maintain that he knew nothing about it, that this money was Michael Cohen's own decision, that it sort of magicked out of nowhere, that Michael Cohen was sort of ridding him of this turbulent priest, making Stormy go away by giving her £130,000. Cohen will maintain it all came directly from Trump.
Well, we have also seen when Michael Cohen appeared before Congress, producing the cheques signed by Donald Trump, paying him back for the money that he paid Stormy Daniels. I think what the defence is going to try and do for Donald Trump's defence team is not to argue about whether Donald Trump knew about the payment to Stormy Daniels. It's going to be whether you can believe a bloody word that Michael Cohen says, because he has already faced criminal conviction and time in prison for lying, not just about this, but about other matters as well, to do with taxi badges in New York and him running a kind of slight business on the side. There
is a bit of Better Call Saul in all this, right?
Exactly. He's a bit of a wide boy. And so what do we believe now? Even though he's under oath, he's been found to have lied in court before. And so the credibility of Michael Cohen is going to be a cornerstone. He also burns on a short fuse, and you can be sure the Trump defence team are going to be trying to light that fuse and watching Cohen blow up.
Yeah, this is basically the last week of the prosecution's witness in this case of the hush money trial in New York. And Donald Trump has been trying to get ahead of the news cycle. He's been coming out ahead of Michael Cohen's testimony. But instead of just talking about the trial, or I guess he's kind of gagged, he can't really talk about Michael Cohen very much. He can, however, talk about the New York Times' latest polls.
The New York Times just came out with a poll. It shows us leading everywhere by a lot. This is the cover story, and I think you'll find it very interesting, but I'm sure you've all read it. Leading in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, and Nevada. Nevada, we are leading actually by 12 points, which is generally a Democrat state. I think we're probably leading in New Jersey. We had a rally, over 100,000 people this weekend. A lot of the mainstream media didn't want to say how many people, they didn't want to cover it. But in fact, I don't think anybody did. I hear the crowd was not shown by the mainstream media, which is what they tell me. But that's par for the course.
You will get used to...
This is so much Trump grievance tour, isn't it? That the mainstream media didn't show the crowd, they didn't cover the rally. Look at the polls, I'm absolutely rocking it in the polls. Of course, his relationship with the New York Times is so complex because he hates it, and yet they produce a poll which shows Trump ahead. He loves it, and so it goes on.
Yeah, I mean, in the perfect Trump world, he's saying don't look at Michael Cohen, don't look at the trial, don't look at any of the stuff I'm alleged to have done, do look at the polls. And I guess there is a danger that we do all look at the polls, because the polls are slightly mind-blowing. Even though people aren't concentrating on the elections yet, even though we're 6 months out, they do show that in the Sunshine States, in parts of Southern America and in parts of the Rust Belt, he seems to be inching ahead. And I guess Democrats can legitimately be scratching their heads about this, right?
Yeah, absolutely, totally. And I'm sure that's something else we're going to be looking at on the Newsagents USA, Michael Cohen's evidence, his demeanour, the defence attack on him, how the prosecution navigated his past criminal record.
Before we go, we often talk about campaign funding, American style, on this programme, where they raise millions, if not billions. I think Obama was the first billion-dollar campaign president. And we've always compared it with what happens here in the UK, where we like to think that we're pretty moderate and we just have little donations from a few people and nobody really gets too politically involved. But there's been an extraordinary piece of work by Rowena Mason at The Guardian, who has uncovered the funders, the donors, the bankrollers of Reform UK. And it all seems to come down to one man.
Oh, go and tell me who.
The guy who runs it.
Oh, the leader?
Yes.
So it's his own party?
Yes. I mean, it's literally his party. He runs the party, he owns the party, he funds the
bankrolls
party,
it.
he bankrolls it, £1.4 million. Nothing illegal about that. There's nothing wrong with owning your own political party. But it does slightly belie this idea that, you know, whether it's the Brexit Party or the UKIP Party or Reform Party, is run by the people, for the people, grassroots campaigning.
Well, you talked about Obama a minute ago, and Obama prided himself on all the sort of small donations of $5 here,
They
$10
love small
there,
donations.
$20 somewhere else. And that was the campaign that he ran on. And, you know, and parties in Britain similarly like to think that they, you know, the Tory party, great history of kind of fundraising at local level. Yes, doesn't compare to the Frank Hesters of this world who might just cut a cheque for £5 million. But the fundraising is an important element that sort of gives them legitimacy and involves
And gets people's names and addresses on the database as well.
Exactly. But Reform, it's a one-man show.
Yeah.
We'll be back tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.